At issue. Most important in what is being discussed. The environmental impact is at issue in the debate over new construction. At length. In great detail. The methodology was discussed at length in the appendix. At length. To talk for a long time. The lead scientist discussed the experimental methodology at length during the seminar. At one time or another. At some time in the past. Most researchers encounter replication challenges at one time or another. At one time or another. On some occasion in the past. Most scientists encounter experimental failure at one time or another. At one time or another, phrase. Used to talk about an occasion in the past without saying exactly which occasion it was. At one time or another, every student struggles with data analysis, at SB's expense. In order to make someone look stupid. Simplistic explanations were dismissed at the junior researcher's expense, despite the data being methodologically sound. At SB's expense. In order to make someone look stupid. Mocking colleagues at the expense of their mistakes is unethical in research environments. At the best of times. Even under ideal conditions. At the best of times, manual analysis is time-consuming. At the best of times. Used to show something is not good even in the best case. Data synchronization is challenging at the best of times due to network latency. At the best of times, phrase. Used to show that something is not good when it is the best it can be. At the best of times, the chemical reaction is unstable. At the earliest. Not before. Results will be available in June at the earliest. At the earliest. Used after a time or date to show that something will not happen before then. The samples will be ready for analysis at the earliest next Monday, at the hands of SB being harmed or treated badly by someone. Several ecosystems deteriorated at the hands of unregulated industrial activity. At the hands of SB, countable noun. If you suffer at the hands of someone they hurt you or treat you badly. The fragile samples were destroyed at the hands of careless interns, at the latest. No later than. Data must be submitted by Friday at the latest. At the latest. Must be done before a particular time. All lab reports must be submitted by Friday at the latest. At the tender age of. At a very young age. At the tender age of 16, she published a peer-reviewed study, although such cases are rare. At the tender age of. At a very young age. At the tender age of 12, neural plasticity is particularly high. At the tender age of the 17th of August, 25 etc., phrase. At the young age of the 17th of August, 25, etc. He began studying marine biology at the tender age of 17. At this rate. If things continue the same way. At this rate, computational demands will exceed available processing capacity. At this rate. Used before saying what will happen if a situation continues in the same way. At this rate, the glacier will melt entirely within a few decades. At your fingertips. Easily accessible. High-resolution data is now at researchers' fingertips. At your fingertips, idiom. If you have something at your fingertips, you can get it and use it very easily. With online journals, research data are at your fingertips. At your own risk. With full responsibility. Field researchers may proceed at their own risk in unstable environments. At your own risk. If you do something at your own risk, you are responsible for anything bad that might happen. Students may enter the chemical storage room at their own risk after training. At by your side. If you have someone at by your side, they support you and help you. Having an experienced assistant by your side is invaluable during complex experiments. At from the outset. From the beginning. From the outset, safety was prioritized. Attach, include. To add as part of something. Supplementary datasets were attached to the final report. Attach importance to. To consider important. The committee attached great importance to ethical transparency. Attachment, feeling. A strong emotional connection. Emotional attachment can influence risk perception in decision-making. Attack, Criticism. Strong verbal criticism. The methodology came under sustained attack during peer review. Attack, disease. To damage biologically. The virus attacks host cells by binding to surface receptors. Attainable. Possible to achieve. With current technology, carbon neutrality is attainable in controlled systems. Attraction, feeling. Strong liking. Neural attraction is mediated by dopaminergic pathways. Attribute, quality. A characteristic. Adaptability is a key attribute of resilient systems. Attribute STH to STH. Explain as caused by. The failure was attributed to thermal stress rather than design flaws. Automatic, certain. Inevitable. System shutdown is automatic once critical thresholds are exceeded. Automatic, person. Done without thinking. The response was automatic, triggered by conditioned reflexes. Avenue, possibility. A possible way forward. Gene editing offers a promising avenue for disease prevention. Away, continuous action. Continuously. The processor kept calculating away despite reduced power input. Or. A feeling of deep respect. Astronomical scale often inspires awe due to its magnitude. Awesome, special. Causing admiration. The telescope's resolution is awesome by modern standards. Awkward, not confident. Not relaxed. Early stage collaboration can feel awkward despite shared goals. Back, STH it away, into it out. To move backwards. The vehicle backed away slowly to avoid sensor damage. Back, support. To support. The institution backed the initiative with sustained funding. Back and forth. Repeated movement. Ions move back and forth across the membrane. Back off. To move away. Cells back off proliferation when nutrient levels decline. Back out. To withdraw from a plan. The sponsor backed out after regulatory requirements changed. Back SB up, truth. Support someone's claim. Independent measurements backed her up conclusively. Back STH up, prove. Provide evidence. The hypothesis was backed up by longitudinal data. Back to front. With reversed orientation. The image was rendered back to front due to calibration error. Backing. Support or funding. The project received strong financial backing. Backward. Less developed. Backward infrastructure limits data sharing capacity. Baggage, feelings. Emotional history. Cultural baggage can influence scientific interpretation. Balcony, theater. Upper seating area. Acoustic measurements differ significantly between the balcony and stalls. Band, circle. A piece of material put around something. A conductive band was placed around the cylinder to stabilize the electromagnetic field. Bar, preventing success. Something that prevents success. Limited bandwidth remains a significant bar to real-time remote diagnostics. Bare, basic. Including only what is essential. The protocol was reduced to its bare essentials to minimize experimental noise. Bare, empty. Empty. After extraction, the soil sample was left bare of organic matter. Bark, shout. To speak loudly and sharply. The supervisor barked instructions during the emergency drill. Bark, tree. The hard outer layer of a tree. Tree bark insulates vascular tissue from temperature extremes. Barn. A large farm building. The specimens were stored in a converted barn to maintain stable humidity. Base, main part. The most important part. The base of the model consists of validated physical assumptions. Base, main place. The main place of operation. The research team established its base near the observatory. Battle, argument. A competitive argument. A methodological battle emerged over data normalization techniques. Battle, verb. To struggle against difficulty. The algorithm battled noise by iteratively refining parameters. Be like water off a duck's back, idiom. If criticisms, insults, etc. are like water off a duck's back to you, they do not affect you at all. The scientists' peer review comments were like water off a duck's back after years of experience. Be like water off a duck's back, idiom. If criticisms, insults, etc. are like water off a duck's back to you, they do not affect you at all. The experienced researcher shrugged off the harsh review. It was like water off a duck's back. Be a disgrace to SBSTH. So bad or unacceptable that respect is lost. Falsifying data is a disgrace to the scientific community. Be a first. To be something that has never happened before. This is a first in the field, successfully editing multiple genes simultaneously. Be a recipe for disaster, success, trouble, etc. Noun. Very likely to become a disaster, success, etc. Neglecting safety measures is a recipe for disaster in chemical laboratories. Be a revelation. To be an extremely pleasant surprise. The new imaging method was a revelation in cellular biology research. Be aimed at doing STH. To be intended to achieve something. The intervention is aimed at reducing infection rates while preserving immunity. Be alive and kicking well, idiom. To continue to live or exist and be full of energy or success. Despite early criticism, the research field is alive and kicking, with rapid methodological advances. Be an effort. To be difficult, tiring or boring to do. Conducting the multi-step experiment was an effort, but yielded important data. Be an inspiration to SB. To be admired and encourage someone else. Marie Curie was an inspiration to many young scientists. Be at a premium. Be scarce and valuable. During the outbreak, laboratory-grade reagents were at a premium. Be at a premium. Not enough of something useful. Skilled engineers are at a premium in the industry. Be at liberty to. To be allowed. Researchers are at liberty to publish negative results. Be at liberty to do STH. To be allowed to do something. Researchers are at liberty to publish their findings after peer review. Be at odds with. To disagree with. The results are at odds with previous theoretical predictions. Be at odds with. To disagree with. The theory is at odds with evidence. Be at stake. Be at risk of loss. Public trust in science is at stake when data is misrepresented. Be at stake. If something is at stake, it is in a situation where it might be lost or damaged. Years of research are at stake if the data are mishandled. Be at the mercy of. Unable to control. Field studies are at the mercy of weather conditions. Be at the mercy of STH. Unable to control or protect yourself. Coastal cities are at the mercy of rising sea levels. Be at reach the end of your tether, idiom. To be so tired, annoyed or worried by something that you do not feel that you can deal with it. After 48 hours of continuous monitoring, the researchers were at the end of their tether. Be beside yourself, with STH. To feel strong emotion. The team was beside itself with relief after validation. Be blind to STH. To not notice something. Some policymakers were blind to early warning signs of the crisis. Be born. If an idea starts to exist. The hypothesis was born during a discussion about enzyme kinetics. Be crawling with STH. To be full of insects or people unpleasantly. The abandoned lab was crawling with insects, posing contamination risks. Be crying out for STH. To need something very much. The experiment was crying out for more precise measurement tools. Be descended from. To be related to someone or something that lived long ago. Modern horses are descended from a prehistoric species. Be disposed to do STH. Willing or likely to do something. He was disposed to accept the new protocol proposed by the senior scientist. Be down in the dumps, idiom. To be unhappy. He was down in the dumps after the experiment failed for the third time. Be down in the dumps, idiom. To be unhappy. The graduate felt down in the dumps after failing the experiment for the third time. B. Down to SB to be someone's responsibility or decision. It was down to the lab technician to calibrate the instruments. B. Endowed with STH. To have a particular quality or characteristic. She is endowed with an exceptional ability to interpret complex data. Be far removed from STH. To be very different from something. The laboratory procedures are far removed from theoretical predictions. Be far removed from STH, verb. To be very different from something. The experimental results are far removed from the initial theoretical predictions. Be glued to STH. To be watching something, especially television. The students were glued to the live stream of the space launch. Be hard on SB to make someone unhappy by causing them problems. The supervisor was hard on the interns to ensure proper lab safety. Be hungry for STH. To have a strong wish for something. She was hungry for knowledge and spent long hours in the library. Be in awe of. To feel deep respect. Many researchers are in awe of the brain's computational efficiency. Be in awe of SB to feel great respect for and sometimes fear of someone. Young researchers are often in awe of Nobel laureates in their field. Be in bad, poor taste, phrase. To be unacceptable in a way that will upset or anger people. Using misleading graphs in a report is in bad taste. Be in good taste. To be acceptable in a way that will not upset or anger people. The poster design is in good taste for the academic conference. Be in good taste, phrase. To be acceptable in a way that will not upset or anger people. The poster was designed to be in good taste for all audiences. Be in good, bad repair, noun. To be in good, bad condition. The laboratory instruments were in good repair, ensuring accurate measurements. Be in line with STH. Consistent with something. The results are in line with earlier findings. Be in SB's good, bad books, idiom. To be liked or disliked by someone. She was in the supervisor's good books after submitting a detailed report. Be in the balance. Be uncertain. The approval of the drug hangs in the balance pending trials. Be in the mood for STH, to do STH. To want to do or have something. The team was not in the mood for further testing. Be in the process of doing STH. Have started doing something. The scientists were in the process of testing a new vaccine. Be in the same boat, idiom. To be in the same unpleasant situation. All students were in the same boat when the experimental data was lost. Be in the same boat, idiom. To be in the same unpleasant situation as others. All students were in the same boat when the lab computers crashed. Be in tune with ISB, STH, noun. To understand what someone wants or needs, or to understand a situation and act in a way that is suitable for it. The new lab assistant was in tune with the principal investigator's expectations. Be intent on STH, doing STH. Determined to do or achieve something. She was intent on publishing her findings in a top journal. Be itching to do STH. To want to do something very much. The researcher was itching to publish her findings after the successful experiment. Be lacking. To not have enough of something needed. The experiment was lacking sufficient sample size for statistical significance. Be led by STH. To be caused or influenced by something. The study was led by previous research on gene expression. Be liable to do STH. To be likely to do something. Older machines are liable to malfunction under extreme conditions. Be like water off a duck's back. Have no effect. Criticism was like water off a duck's back to the seasoned researcher. Be looking to do STH. To plan or intend to do something. The company is looking to expand renewable energy investments. Be lost for words. Unable to speak because of strong feeling. Observers were lost for words at the scale of the eruption. Be lost for words, idiom. To be so surprised, angry or moved by something that you do not know what to say. The researcher was lost for words when her theory was confirmed. Be meant to do STH, and duty. What you should do. Protective equipment is meant to be worn at all times. Be meant to do purpose. What something is designed for. The device is meant to detect radiation. Be misunderstood. To not have one's qualities or intentions correctly understood. Innovative theories are often misunderstood at first. Be news to SB. To surprise someone. The discovery was news to the scientific community. Be no laughing matter. If a subject is no laughing matter, it is serious. Handling hazardous chemicals is no laughing matter in the lab.